Ladies and gentlemen, the 8th International Conference on Interreligious and Intercultural Studies, Friday, 25th of February 2021 will be start. Good morning and best wishes to all of us. Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam namo buddhaya. The Honorable Representative of Kota Denpasar Major, the Honorable of Deputy Regent of Kediri Regency, East Java, Indonesia, the Honorable Chairman of Parisad Hindu Dharma Indonesia, the Honorable Professor Dr. Pil Iketut Ardana MA, Head of Pendidikan Widyakarti Foundation, the Honorable Professor Dr. Dr. Imade Damriase MS, Rector of University of Indonesia Denpasar and all of Deans in Universitas Hindu Indonesia Denpasar, the Honorable Mrs. Ayu Dewi Kartika, Special Staff of the President of Republic Indonesia for Tolerance and Diversity, the Honorable Dr. Madenovia Indriani, Chairwoman of Organizing Committee, International Conference of Interreligious and Intercultural Studies, and also the person of in charge as a moderator, Professor Dr. Yekti Maunati MA, from National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia, BRIN, and also our discussion, Bapak Dr. Diki Sofyan, PhD, from ICIIS Gajah Mada University, Yogyakarta. Especially for our guests, for the guest speaker, Professor Dr. Wening Udasmoro, Ibu Sri Astari Rashid, former Ambassador of Indonesia in Bulgaria, Ibu Dewi Maria Ulfa ST, Deputy Regent of Kediri Regency, East Java, Indonesia, Professor Chandra Sektar Bhatt, The Experiences of India Diaspora, Professor Pamela Allen, University of Tasmania, Australia, Dr. Jean Alstrand, University of New England, Australia, and all the audience, the participants of this conference, good morning and hopefully well of us with good health and happiness. The 8th International Conference on Interreligious and the Intercultural Studies, ICIIS, today with the term gender, intersectionality, and diasporic communities, organized by University of Hindu Indonesia Denpasar and collaboration with International Federation of Social Science Organization, Haran University, Turkey, National Research and Innovation Agency, Indonesia Consortium for Religious Studies, Gajah Mada University, Yogyakarta, Airlangga University from Surabaya, Udayana University, Denpasar, Bali, IAIN Kediri, Universitas Mula Warman, LPPM University of Hindu Indonesia Denpasar, and the last one, but not least, Yayasan Pendidikan Widyakerti Denpasar. Ladies and gentlemen and all great happiness audience, first of all, starting this agenda, warm greeting from organizing committee to show opening performance by Balinese traditional dance Padmani Puja, performed by our student of Hindu Indonesia Denpasar. Please welcome Padmani Puja Dance. Ladies and gentlemen, big applause to Padmani Puja Dance. Thank you very much. The second agenda lets us to sing together the Indonesian national anthem, Indonesia Raya. All the participants please to stand up or respectfully on the spot. The PAC, please, time is yours. Ladies and gentlemen, before come to the main session, let us to start be praying, so the event can be running well without any obstacle at all. The lead prayer by Bapak Dr. Idewa Ketut Budiana MPilha. Time is yours.
Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian yang saya hormati, marilah kita berdoa. Doa akan saya pandu dengan doa agama Hindu. Amrah pat omat metatuat me kesama sampurnaya nama suaha. Om Zara Aswati Namastumbya Waradaka Marupini Siddhi Raksu Karaksame Siddhi Bhavantu Me Sadam. Om Giripati Mahaviryam Mahadewa Pratistalingam Sarva Dewa Pranamya Sarva Jagat Pratistanam. Om Giripati Dipataya Namah Swaha. Om Anubadrah Karasantoya Namah Swaha. Om Sang Yang Widi, Tuhan yang Maha Esa, yang bermanifestasikan Sang Yang Aji Saraswati. Pada hari ini kami hadir di hadapan-Mu untuk menyampaikan permohonan dalam rangka International Virtual Conference of Intelligence and Intercultural Studies. Kalau bersida antara UNHI, ICIIS UGM, Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional, Masyarakat Sejarah Indonesia, IPSO dan FIB Universitas Udayana dengan tema kesetaraan antara laki-laki dan perempuan dalam praktek kehidupan di masyarakat. Jadikanlah pertemuan ini senantiasa dalam lindungan-Mu. Om Sang Yang Widiwasa Tuhan Yang Maha Pengasih, jauhkanlah bakta-Mu dari segala kegelapan, berikanlah jalan yang terang, lindungi mereka dan tetapkanlah kebahagiaan di antara kami semua. Himpunkanlah segala kebajikan yang terserak dari seluruh ciptaan-Mu, dan jadilah rahmat bagi manusia. Om Sang Yang Widiwasa Tuhan Yang Maha Pemurah, kabulkanlah doa dan permohonan kami. Semoga pikiran yang baik datang dari segala penjuru. Om Shanti, 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 Om.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please have seated. Ladies and gentlemen and all great and happiness audience, the next agenda, speech from Professor Dr. Dr. Imade Damriase, Rector of Hindu Indonesia University. Bapak Damriase, time is yours.
Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you all for joining the International Conference on Interreligious and Intercultural Studies. Today, it is organized by Universitas Hindu Indonesia, was held again in a hybrid manner, offline and online, with the theme Gender, Intersectionality, and Diasporic Communities. The seminar is followed by the keynote speaker, delivered by Ibu Ayu Kartika Dewi. She is the specialist staff of the President Republic of Indonesia for the Tolerance and Diversity. And also the main speakers, one of them is Ibu Dewi Maria Ufa, Wakil Bupati Kediri. Thank you, Ibu Maria, for joining offline this conference. And thank you very much again from Hindu University of Indonesia. This main speaker come from various countries who will deliver material according to their competency related to the conference today. The seminar participants who took part in this event, both as presenter and as participant, come from academic and researchers from Universitas Hindu Indonesia, Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional Republik Indonesia, ICIIS Universitas Gajah Mada Yogyakarta, from Universitas Airlangga, and also from IAIN Kediri, Universitas Mula Warman, Universitas Udayana, Universitas Indonesia, Institut Seni Indonesia, and also from Universitas Sumatera Utara. The definition of the gender equality refers to equal condition between men and women in fulfilling their rights and obligations. Discrimination based on the gender still occurs in all aspects of life, all over the world. This is a fact despite considerable progress in gender equality today. The nature and the extent of discrimination vary widely between countries or regions. There is not a single region in the third world country where women enjoy equality in legal, social, and economic rights. Gender disparities in opportunity and control over the resources, the economic power, and political participation are ubiquitous. Therefore, gender equality is still the interesting and main issue of a development goal that has its own value. Today, this is the fourth time International Conference on Interreligious and Intercultural Studies has been held virtually during the COVID-19 pandemic with the interesting theme gender, intersectionality, and diasporic communities. I believe we will gain new insight from the perspective of participants who are willing to contribute to this virtual meeting. In particular, I would like to thank the special staff of the President of Indonesia for Tolerance and Diversity for his keynote address at this conference. And then we hope that this conference can become an academic discussion for scholars from various fields of interest and achieve a noble goal. We look forward to hearing your discussion and learning from you insight. Thank you very much. Om Shanti 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 Om. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much to Professor Damriase. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next speech, we will invite from Chairman of Hindu Dharma Indonesia Parisad, Bapak Maijen TNI Purnawirawan Wisnu Bawa Tenaya.
The Chairman of Yayasan Pendidikan Widya Kerti, Profesor Rikardon Ardana, Director of Universitas Hindu Indonesia, Profesor Imade Damriase, distinguished guests, scholars, and all participants. Allow me to convey my greetings to all of you in Balinese way. Om Swastiastu. May all good thoughts spreading from all sides, giving us a healthy soul and body. It is a great honor to the among scholars in this valuable forum, even a virtual way, the 8th International Conference of Interreligious and Intercultural Studies with an excellent theme, gender, intersectionality, and diasporic communities. Dear scholars, from historical evidence, we have witnessed the dominance of man over woman, or the so-called patriarchal or the social patriarchal society for a long time within Indonesian society and other societies in the world. However, this does not mean that this condition has remained the same paradigm shift in terms of the role of women in society is also occurring. Its situation has particular characteristic, as do the experiences of its community in its nation. Discussing issues in light of intersectionality, particularly from the perspective of feminist sociological theory since the late 20th century, is also important. The insight inevitably raises a question about social inequalities and injustice. The lens of intersectionality can nurture a better understanding of oppression such as racism, sexism, and bigotry toward certain beliefs and religions that occurs in society due to various interesting and often invisible patterns of domination. Diasporic communities may also share similar experiences, whether being marginalized as considered as a second class station, especially during a assimilation process within host countries. The spreading of diasporic communities is often due to political reason, although not this one can observe other motivation such as economic and educational. The ways in which diasporic communities struggle to maintain a sense of their cultural identities is a significant topic. However, diasporic communities are not a singular entity. Each person has a different historical background and position within transnational migration. Dear audience, I believe that your participation in the conference will be an excellent opportunity for the local scholars, researchers, and cultures holders to discuss various challenges and objectives regarding sustainable living, especially in a post-pandemic. Hopefully, these academic forums could give more value to the local genius and the local knowledge. Have a fruitful discussion to all of you. Thank you. Om Shanti, 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 Om.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and all happiness audience. For the main session this morning, in the great event, we invite our keynote speech, Mrs. Ayu Dewi Kartika, Special Staff of the President of Republic of Indonesia for Tolerance and Diversity, with our chair by Professor Dr. Pil Iketut Ardana, MA. To Ibu Ayu Dewi Kartika and Prof. Ardana, time is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is healthy, physically and mentally, in the middle of a very difficult time for all of us. It is a great pleasure for me to be here, to be in this wonderful conference. Although virtually, I'm very happy to see all of the dances. I saw a glimpse of everyone's pictures in the Zoom, and I saw a glimpse of everyone in the forum that's there on offline today. I hope everyone is healthy. So my name is Ayu Kartika Dewi. I'm one of the special staff of the President of Indonesia, especially in the area of diversity and tolerance. And I would like to greet everyone in this wonderful opportunity. I would like to greet the steering committee, Professor Ardana, Professor Made Damriasa, Professor Yekti Maunati, Mas Diki Sofian, and Professor Purnawan Basundoro. And also our speakers, I would like to greet them as well. Professor Wening Udas Moro, Professor Chandra Sekabat, I hope you're well. Her Excellency Ibu Sri Astari Rashid, Dr. Pamela Allen, I hope you're well. Ibu Dewi Maria Ulfa and Dr. Jane Alster. I hope everyone is healthy. I'm going to share my screen. So allow me to speak a little bit about moving humanity forward. A little bit of introductions about myself. I started in Erlangga University. I saw several speakers from Erlangga University. Hello. And then I studied in the US, in the UK, and also in Australia. This is my professional background. I started in the corporate. I was a corporate girl, and then I became a primary school teacher, and then until right now, I'm in the government. And these are several organizations that I've started, and I like mindfulness. I meditate every day. I like stand-up comedy, but Professor Ardana invited me today to speak as a keynote speech, not as a stand-up comedian, so that's okay. I like to play music. I do yoga. This is me, upside down. I love plants and I love scuba diving. That's why I envy everyone who is in Bali today. So everyone, knowledge and wisdom move forward humanity and society. And of course, everyone believes that humanity and society needs to move forward. We don't always move forward as a humanity and society, and especially looking at the recent events right now that happens globally, it's pretty saddening and heartbreaking. But we still have to try as much as possible to move our society forward. And how do we do that? How do we move society forward? Socrates said in one of the conversations with Plato, only through discussions we can start to understand concepts such as wisdom, courage, and justice. And that is why conferences like this, discussions like this, is very precious, because discussions brings together knowledge and wisdom. Just looking at the numbers of people that's going to present their papers, their lifetime researches in this event, this conference and these discussions are a melting pot of so many bright minds and great knowledge and experiences that can be shared and discussed. And I believe this will move the humanity forward. And in the regards of the area of intercultural, interreligious, and gender, I would like to share a little bit of my personal experiences. And I will share later on as to why I share my experiences. So the first one is my experiences as a woman. And these experiences are very, very personal. I actually rarely talk about this. So this happens when I was in junior high school, many, many years ago. I was standing by myself on the side street, waiting for public transportation. You can imagine the view. I was in Surabaya at that time. And there was a group of older teenager boys passing by, right? And then one of them quickly approached me, groped my chest as everyone was laughing. And then he quickly came back in the middle of the crowd. They all laughed together and went away. It's still very vivid in my mind. And at that time, I remembered I felt not knowing what to do. I was frozen. I was angry, but I know I couldn't do anything because I was alone. There were so many of them. So for many years, that memory stays and becomes frustrations and anger. And I will share why I shared this story. Similar things happens when I was in school as well. I was in a public swimming pool. I was in the changing room. And as I was looking up, there is this gap between the wall and the ceiling. And I saw a hand holding a mirror. So there is this man who was trying to peek on what's happening inside the changing room. I was looking at him And I think he saw because I was looking at him, he was speaking, and he ran away. I'll stop there and I'll move to another story. So this is another story when I was as part of the interreligious society. As I mentioned a little bit before, that I used to be a primary school teacher. This was me and my students when I was teaching in the eastern part of Indonesia, in Maluku Utara. So I was deployed there in a very remote island. I love it. I love it. It was one of the best years in my life. One story that stuck with me was because that area was impacted by the riot. I'm sure everyone remembered the riot that happened in many different parts of Indonesia in 1998, 1999, right? So the area that I was deployed in also got impacted by the riots. Thousands of people died within the province, within the region. I taught there about 10 years after the riot. So the riot was over a decade ago. So I taught there. And what made me really surprised is that the impact is actually an intergenerational impact. So my students that you can see in this picture, they were not born as yet when the riot happens, but they heard the stories from their parents, from their older brothers and sisters. They heard all the stories. And there was this one moment. I happened to be deployed in a 100% Muslim village, right? And one afternoon, I heard my students say this to me, and they said, "Ma'am, we need to be careful with Christians because Christians can burn down our houses." And I was, "Kids, you lived in a 100% Muslim society. You've never even met any Christians in your life. How could you have so much hatred and fear towards Christian?" And then I realized that the impact of a riot is actually intergenerational. And I'm sure this fear and hatred and anger also happens in the next door village, where there is a lot of Christian kids. They also have so much fear and anger towards Muslim. And I know that this is not healthy, right? So fast forward many years later, I was studying in the US in Duke University. And there was this shooting happens. And the victims are family of Muslims. They are dentists and students. And they were shot in their house by someone who just happened doesn't like Muslims, right? Their neighbors, actually, who doesn't like Muslims. And it happened not far away from my place. It happened only 30 minutes away from where I lived. And as you can see that I'm very visibly Muslim, I wear a hijab. And I ride my bike to school every day. And I remembered the shooting happens that night. And I remembered in the morning, as I was getting ready to go to school, I was putting on my helmet, I was putting on my backpack, I was getting ready to bring my bike outside. I remembered as I put on my helmet, I thought, there was a shooting that happened a few hours ago, and it's not far from here, and I'm very visibly Muslim, I wear hijab, and I'm going to ride a bike to the campus, right? I remembered I was thinking, will I reach school alive? And I remember that it is not an easy feeling to have. No one should ever have that feeling. So, and why am I telling you all this? Because what happened to us shaped us, right? What happened to all of us shaped all of us, and it made us who we are today. So the stories that happened when, as the sexual harassment that happened, it actually leads me to co-found this movement called Perempuan Gagal. Or in English, it's actually mean failed female. It is actually a platform. It's in YouTube and in Instagram, and as a group mentoring, to provide safe space for women to share stories about their failures and to grow together. The aim is to normalize failure, that everyone fails and that's okay. So the anger and the frustrations become a movement. And my confusions about the intolerance that happened in the world actually create me to co-found another organization called Sabang Merauke, which is a student exchange program that happens across parts of Indonesia. It actually also leads me to join Indica Foundation, and actually to leads me to where I am today as one of the special staff of the president that's handling tolerance and diversity. So confusions and fears actually leads to movements and actions. And why? And this is why I arrive at some requests to all of us that's here today. Don't lose hope, right? Don't lose hope. And especially if you look at everything that happens in the world, if you read the news, all of you are doing research on so many different things. Probably you've seen many bad or grim data about what you've researched, and probably you've seen little progress. Don't lose hope. I hope that everyone here can transform whatever the frustrations and anger and sadness that they have into something that is actionable, into something that is useful for the society. So the first request that I have for all of you is don't ever lose hope. The second one is to collaborate, right? Because we will never be able to solve all the problems together. So you are all here today, not just to present paper, but hopefully to learn from each other, and even better, to collaborate. Because without collaboration, we will not be able to move the humanity forward. Never. Right. And the third one, this is my last request, is remember to take care of yourself. Remember to take care of yourself. And especially in the middle of a pandemic, taking care of ourselves physically is even more important. And in the middle of everything that happens around us, taking care of us mentally is very important, because otherwise we will not have the energy to continue to move forward the society. That is all that I have today. Happy collaborating. I hope you have a fruitful discussions in this conference. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Ayu Kartika Dewi. I apologize that the MC already wrongly spelled your name, and again, I'm very sorry about that. And for all of the participants, if you have any question to our guest and our keynote speaker, you can ask. Maybe do you have any question or not? Okay, Bu, thank you very much for your welcoming speech and also for your keynote address for this important conference. And I do really know about your maybe strategic planning and strategic way on how we should improve our the role of the gender in the modern and postmodern Indonesia. Again, thank you very much, Ibu Ayu Kartika Dewi. Let's give applause to Ibu Ayu Kartika Dewi.
Thank you very much to Ibu Ayu Kartika Dewi and also Prof. Ardana. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, so for the first session, I will say thank you very much for your attention and cooperation, because the first session is running well this morning. And now we will prepare for the plenary session. So the community and all of audience, we need some minute to prepare for the next plenary session. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next session, the plenary session, we will invite all our guest speakers with the moderator, Professor Yekti Manuati MA, and our discussion, Bapak Dr. Diki Sofyan PhD. To Bapak Professor Yekti Maunati and also Dr. Diki Sofyan. Time is yours, Pak.
Thank you. Can I start? Can I start? Just waiting for Pak Diki. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu. So, for this library, we have 6 speakers and 1 discussion. 6 speakers, so we are very lucky that we have very prominent speakers, especially on gender and on diaspora. So, and we have the first one will be Professor Dr. Wening Udasmoro, and the second one will be Professor Chandra Sekhar Bhatt, and the third one is Her Excellency Sri Astari Rashid, and then the fourth one, Associate Professor Dr. Pamela Allen, and then Ibu Dewi Maria Ulfa, the Deputy Regent of the BB, and then the last one will be Dr. Jane Asa. So every speaker will have 20 minutes for presentations, and we will continue with Dr. Diki Sofyan for discussion, and then open discussion for all of you. So now I would like to invite the first speaker, Professor Dr. Wening Udasmoro. So, she is a professor of literature and gender at the University of UGM, and PhD in gender studies, University of Geneva, Switzerland, 2006, and Dean of the Faculty of Cultural Studies of the Dharmada University from 2012 to 2016, and also as the chair of the ICIIS, so it's the same with Dr. Diki, till 2009 and 12. And the main interest is gender identity politics, and also she also of course published a lot of publication papers, but I just read it. The forthcoming one is the transformation of social military on women's sexuality in Indonesia literature from New Order to Reform Era. So this is in the journal. So I would like to invite Professor Dr. Wening Udasmoro. I think Professor Dr. Wening Udasmoro will be on the online Zoom. So time is Professor. Are you
Yeah,
here?
thank you very much. I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much for UNHI for inviting me in this forum. So I will present my PowerPoint here. Yeah. I think you can see my PowerPoint presentation. So, my presentation is entitled Between Memory and Trajectory, Gender Literary Narratives of Japanese Diaspora in New Caledonia. So this is my latest research. I went already there, and I start to build, a lot of writings about this issue. But why in this conference I present this topic? Because I think we are formed by the past, by the story of the past. Inside our stories, there are also other stories that build us. And the diaspora communities are part also of our story. So their past is our history, and their trajectory is also our part to the future. So the objective of my study, some part of the objective of my study is to explore the memory and the trajectory of the Javanese diaspora in New Caledonia. And here I analyze two novels written by two female authors of Javanese descent in New Caledonia using a gender perspective. So these are the two novels. The first one is La Bayou, the Jakarta Anomea by Lilian Saint-Omer. And the second one is Le Rêve Accompli, the Bandung Anomea by Ama Bastien. So these are some of the literary works of women's Javanese diaspora in the Southwest Pacific region. So it is quite surprising that in New Caledonia, many women, they write their stories through novels or through academic writing. So from the historical perspective, I think we need to look at this. So the Javanese diaspora left Java since 1896. And they were sent as workers or kuli, or they call them orang kontrak, by the Dutch colonial government at the request of French colonial government. And the delivery was based on agreement called Kuli Ordonantie. And this regulation was signed by the Governor General of Netherlands, number 138, and this legal regulation was implemented since 1880s. So why or how, what is the purpose of sending these laborers? So the purpose is to send the unskilled laborers willing to work in the Dutch colonies, especially in the plantation and also mining. And the French colonial government took advantage of this program because they had problems with their colonies in the Southwest Pacific to cultivate the agricultural land and also to exploit nickel mines. So when were the arrivals of the Javanese people in New Caledonia? The first arrival was on February 16, 1896. And the second arrival was in the 1950s after the Second World War. And the third arrival was during the 1970s, the third wave of the arrival. Our question may be why departing to New Caledonia? Because this is against the philosophy of the Javanese. Because the Javanese, they have the philosophy, mangan orang mangan asal kumpul, or eat or not. The important thing is together with the family. So one of the point important is because of the poverty in the land of the origin. So New Caledonia was a kind of land of hope for them. So Kuli Ordonantie was seen as a political opportunity structure for the Javanese at that time to try to achieve their hope in the new land. So I see that when we talk about the communities, the diaspora communities, it's not neutral in terms of gender. So there is kind of gender narratives that I found portrayed in the novels. Of those who choose to go to the land of destination, there were quite significant differences between men and women. So the differences in terms of their experience when living in the new land, and also how the original land became the building of their identity they wanted to preserve. So there are differences between man and woman experience. So I'm talking here about memories and trajectories because there is a different pattern between male and female Javanese diaspora and seeing the past. They also have different trajectory when living in New Caledonia, and also they have different challenges and survival strategies in the new land. So the setting of the novels, so the two authors wrote about the experiences of their Javanese parents. So the story is a kind of the narrative of their parents who became the contract laborer at the time. So Lilian Saint-Omer talked about the experience of her mother. So the setting was around Jakarta, and the time arrival was the first arrival in the 19th century. And Ama Bastien, this is the experience of a father, the place in Bandung, and it is the second arrival during the Second World War. So in the story of Lilian Saint-Omer, I found that there is a kind of escapism by the female character. So the female character depicted by Lilian Saint-Omer came from a poor family. Her daily occupation was working in the field as a farmer. She had to do hard work, even she was only 15 years old. So the suffering explicitly used as one of the reasons to exile to another country. So here we see that the promises, good salary, house, the opportunity to come back home when the contract expired, encourage women character to go. However, I saw from the novel that the departure of the female characters, not only her, but also some of her friends, to New Caledonia was actually not only because of planning to get a better life or finance, in terms of finance. In the story of the main character, she actually did escapism from her stepmother, whom she called as Other. So she called this woman Other because of her incompatibility with her. She was often becoming the object of others' exploitations. So here, when we talk about the question of intersectionality, the women who departed to New Caledonia, these women were young, poor, from rural area, and exploited by her own family. So it became the memory of their past. So for women, living was a time to escape the realities of life as poor farmer in Java. She escaped from another subject because of imbalanced power relation even from the same gender, but from different age category because of the hierarchy of age, although they have the similar gender. So there is also the story of sense of solidarity with her best friends. So leaving Java is also a story of how they want to be solidar, the solidarity among them, among the Javanese people at the time. So lack of love from family was the important part told very deeply by the author to justify why the female character left. So what about the man? The men look at their departure to New Caledonia is not really as escapism. It's an adventure. So the main character here came from rich family. However, he argued that the treasure was not the result of his own hard work, so the property belonged to his parents. So in certain contexts of Javanese men, leaving Java and wandering sought the practice of manhood, courage, power, and also determination. Wandering was also symbol of man's liberation. So although apart from that, he lost many people he loved in tragic ways, but the important thing showed in the novels is a question of adventure of the male character. So the memory is a question of forgetting and remembering. Forgetting is one aspect elaborated in this novel. In the novel, men, for instance, tried to forget, while women wanted to remember the past. In the interview with Ama Bastien and Lilian Saint-Omer, I did. Ama Bastien said that her father did not want to talk anymore about Java, and he asked her children not to visit Java. While Saint-Omer said that remembering the past is a way to achieve the future. So there were different aspects of forgetting and remembering. So the second part is a question of trajectory. So the trajectory here is a question of challenges and struggles. So there is a struggle to be carried out by the female character. So they have different challenges and struggles. The woman, she had to fight alone in order to survive in the land of exile. She was not only struggling against other individuals, but also she had to struggle against the system based on gender, race, and social class that favors white people in that island at the time during the colonial time. For example, she became the sexual object of the sailors in the ship during her travel from Java to New Caledonia. She became also the object of exploitation by her patron, who are man and woman, the husband and wife. And also she became object of betrayal by her husband. Even her marriage was cancelled by her patron. So there's a systematic problem she had to face at the time in the story. But in the male character story, he had a very easy life during his travel to New Caledonia. He became even a hero in the ship because he has skills to save other people's life. He had also easy life in New Caledonia. He had happiness getting married to a woman he loves. He had a happy family. He is not explained as having difficulties in social life. The only problem he has was a memory of Java that he tried to forget. So this is my remarks as conclusion. That the memories and trajectories were gender. It was not because they were individuals. So they had personal experiences. There was a system in the society that placed them in different positions collectively. As a result, the female character had to exile and escape from her homeland. However, this condition did not make her throw away the memory of Java. She valued Java as part of her identity. For the male character, he interpreted going to New Caledonia initially as an adventure. In terms of trajectory, the woman and the main characters had the same courage and skills. However, in the society, they had different situations because of the collective system that positioned women as powerless objects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Wening. It's very interesting, the experience of the Japanese diaspora in New Caledonia. And we have a difference between male and female, different experience. So it's very, very interesting. So I will collect the question later, but now I'll continue to the lectures across the Professor Wening. And then we will continue to the second speaker. It's also about diaspora. So the title for Professor Chandra Sekharpat will be the experience of Indian diaspora journey through trial, tribulations, and to triumph. So this, let me read the short CV of Professor Bhatt. So Professor Bhatt is independent researcher on diaspora studies, a professor of eminence, Department of Sociology, Oxford Central University, India, 2010 to 2013, and the founder, director of the Center for the Study of Indian Diaspora, and of course he published a lot of papers on diaspora studies, and also become a keynote in many conferences, including last time conference at our office at LIPI. At the time we still LIPI, not him. So we also invite Professor Chandra Sekharpat at the time. So Professor Chandra Sekharpat, time is yours for 20 minutes. So please, we will be also used online. Are you okay, Prof? Professor Bhatt?
By you.
Okay. Okay, time is yours.
Thank you, Professor Maunati. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. And let me, please allow me to thank Professor Ketu Kardhana, Professor Adityarini, and Professor Indriani for giving this great opportunity of sharing my thoughts and experiences with the Indian diaspora with all of you. And maybe I have about 15 slides. Shall I put it on my screen, please?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can do it.
Okay, sure.
Share screen, yeah.
Let me just see. This is the screen. Can you?
Not yet.
Can you see me? Hello?
Not yet. Not yet.
All right. I think there's some difficulty.
maybe the organizing committee can.
Maybe can you do it from your side there?
Ibu Iya, can you do the share screen?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I think somebody has to get me to the next slide. Yeah. I shall be talking to you, all of you, sharing my ideas on experiences of Indian diaspora, a journey through trials, tribulations to triumph. That means Indian diaspora began with quite a few trials and tribulations, lots of difficulties. And then today, when you see them, they are triumphal in the sense they are very successful. They are seen all over the globe. And let me begin with a brief demographic dispersal of the Indians in different countries. Now, India has 32.1 million people outside India. And of course, we have India, 1.3 billion population in India. We have a fairly large group, perhaps next to the Chinese, dispersed all over the world in 210 countries. And we have a very substantial population in 11 countries, which is more than 500,000 each. So the next slide, please. We have quite a few people in the Caribbean countries, in Fiji, and in South Asian countries, in Africa, and so on, dispersed quite across the globe. The Indians, when you talk about Indian diaspora, we have a single term, diaspora, as such, Indian diaspora, but then in reality, they are highly diversified. And one aspects of diversification or differences among them is seen in terms of when they have migrated out of India to different destinations. For the convenience sake, we analyze the migration of Indians into the 4 streams or 4 waves. The first wave is the migration of indentured labor. I shall come to the explanation of indenture in a course of time soon. These are the people today, the 5th or 4th or 5th generation of the indentured labor who migrated in the 19th century to British and European colonies. And they were often called as coolies, as a derogatory term by all, and especially by the European planters. And they completely lost contact with India because they were taken out of India as almost a cargo in ships. And they are today number more than about 5.6 million all over the world. Next slide, please. The second wave starts after India became independent, and is from 1947 onwards. And most of these are from urban middle class educated people with degrees either for professional occupations there in developed countries or for educational purposes. They are mostly NRI. They went as non-resident Indians and they have become diaspora today by taking up this citizenship in those countries. Next slide, please. The third wave is much recent, starting from 1970s, when there was oil boom in Gulf countries. So majority of the people who have gone belong to the lower middle classes, going there as manual laborers, as semi-skilled people, and also a few professionals. So it's a mixed population which has gone to West Asia. And one of the special feature of these people is that they are well connected with India because they keep moving across and they keep sending the remittances to India because they cannot be having their permanent residences in those countries. Next slide, please. The fourth wave is of the recent one of information communication technology experts, management experts, and nursing professionals to developed countries. They immigrate initially for 6 to 10 years as non-resident Indians, and they then apply for green card and become citizens of those countries. And this is the fourth wave, which in the recent days they have migrated to. Next slide, please. The early migrants who went there as indentured labor, they are spread across from 1834 to 1917. And this indenture is a term invented by the British instead of slavery, because slavery was much maligned, and therefore shooting Curtis is a new term British invented to name slavery. And Indians were one of the large indentured group which had been recruited by various commission agents to British and other European colonies, like the Dutch colonies in Suriname. Then you have also the French colonies to different French locations, and thus we have a large number of indentured labor migrated to outside India from 1834 to 1917. Next slide, please. We have also another term which some of the indentured laborers like to call, because the term agreement had been used by the laborers who are completely unlettered, and they agreed with the labor contract with a thumb impression, because they hardly knew how to read or write, and they agreed those terms and conditions which they didn't know. And these are the situations under which the indentured labor migrated, and they call themselves as Birmitias. So today they are often, they prefer the term Birmitias rather than indenture. And in the process of migration, the major group which migrated are the able-bodied men, and very few women migrated, less than 25% across during this whole tenure of indentured labor migration. The result, one could imagine, there was an extreme exploitation of women, both by the fellow indentured laborers as well as by the planters and the contractors and so on. The position of women was most pitiable, one would say. And these people migrated mainly from Hindi-speaking, or they call it the Bhojpuri-speaking areas of UP, present-day Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and a few people from Tamil Nadu, Tamil-speaking people from Tamil Nadu, and Telugu-speaking people again from Tamil Nadu, from Madras Presidency. So next slide, please. They were taken to the plantation colonies in the Caribbean countries like Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, Jamaica, Pacific Islands in Fiji, African countries like Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, and Mauritius, and to the immediate neighbors in South Asia, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Malaysia, and Singapore. So these are the dispersions of Indians during the colonial times under the indentured labor scheme. Next slide, please. The indentured labor was abolished because of a great effort by the freedom fighters under the Gandhi, and it was discontinued from 1917 as an official discontinuity, but then it continued perhaps another 20 to 30 years, and exploitation of Indian labor continued in all plantation colonies, and their life was as miserable as the slaves. They went through all kinds of suppression, exploitation, and when India became independent, many of them thought they would also have some support from India to alleviate their sufferings, but then perhaps no, they had to continue for some more time until those countries became free. So it was in the 60s and 70s, many of these colonies, European colonies, became free, and they are free today, but then many of these countries are left behind with ethnic rivalries and conflicts. Fiji is one of the major instances wherein Indians are going through still, though they have succeeded once or twice to secure the political power. Mahendra Chaudhary, for instance, was the Prime Minister of Fiji, but then soon in a coup, he lost his prime ministership, and today Indians have no equal rights in a place like Fiji. Next slide, please. Now, the next most successful story begins with the migration of Indians in post-1947, post-India's freedom. And many of them immigrated and became citizens of those countries, especially the developed countries of the West. And on the eastern side, you have Australia, where you have a large Indian population there. And these families were born there. As they settled down, they have created Little India in those places. And around 1940s and 50s, you have another stream of migration of Indians who have gone to under the indenture scheme as twice migrants to the developed countries. So you can see in places like UK, US, in Canada, and so on, Little India's formed, as well as Indo-Caribbean neighborhoods, where you find the creation of Little India. The Indianness is seen all through their streets, in their way of life, and you can see also Indo-Caribbean cultural hubs in different places. So, and today, these people who have migrated post-1947 have occupied positions in industry, in politics, and many of them, even in Gulf countries, they have been able to remit huge amounts of money back home to India, to their places of origin, to their families, and invest. And there's about 83 billion money remitted in 2020. It's not 8.3, 83 billion amount which has been received in 2020. That is the latest figures I have. Next slide, please. The success of Indians in Silicon Valley and in Gulf countries made India to think of Indian presence outside India, Indian power emerging in India, outside India, both in terms of professions, knowledge acquirement, and also in terms of wealth creation, that India decided that they should connect it with the overseas Indians, because we didn't have till then any special connectivity with the official connectivity with the Indian diaspora. So it's in 2000 that a high-level committee of Indian diaspora was formed to formulate new policy framework towards both those who are migrated under indenture scheme called as PIO diaspora, and the NRIs who became citizens of those countries post 1947, and the NRIs who have gone to the Gulf countries mostly, and those who are migrating today to different countries as non-resident Indians, because they are yet to require the citizenship wherever they are allowed to have their citizenship. So the idea is to connect India with the promotion of mutual interest with each other, and to establish closer linkages. And this report was submitted in 2002. And next slide, please. The recommendations have been quite well implemented. Next slide, please. One of the major recommendations of the high-level committee was to organize a Pravasi Day program. Now, every year, initially for about 10 years, we had every year Pravasis descending in India, having a huge convergence in one of the locations in India. And it is the occasion for interactions with the number of agenda of building connectivity with each other, and promoting mutual interests in terms of industrial, commerce, trade, and so on with the Indians outside India. And some of the distinguished or eminent people of Indian origin or NRIs were also provided someone, they were appreciated and recognized by government of India. And for dealing with the diaspora, a single window dispensation under Pravasi Bharatiya Bhavan, a location which has been created in Delhi where people of Indian origin meet each other and seek each other's support to connect with India. And one of the major issues which came before this committee was dual citizenship. India has not yet accepted dual citizenship to the overseas Indians yet, but then a via media has been found in 2005, and it's called Overseas Citizenship of India, wherein they have all the facilities. Indians overseas have the facilities of Indian citizens, except they are allowed for, they are not allowed for contesting elections or take up the government of India jobs, but otherwise they have all the power, all the rights of Indian citizens given to them, overseas Indian citizens. So they even the people of Indian origin have been granted the overseas citizen of India status. So we have all Indians outside India are overseas citizens of India. They have all rights and privileges in India like Indian citizens, except that they cannot become parliamentarians. They can't become ministers or hold government jobs. Next slide, please. Yeah, I just mentioned. Next slide, please. Yeah. Further, there are other policies like to connect Indian youth with India, those who have lost contacts, like PIO diaspora, the children of the Indian child labor, the fourth or fifth generation, they have absolutely no knowledge of their place of origin. They do not know what India looks like. So special programs have been created to connect with the Indian youth with scholarships for the diaspora youth, and Know Your India program, a month-long orientation for the diaspora youth. Every year they will have a new batch of say about 50 to 100 people are invited to India to showcase India, what their India is today. And for those who have been away for under the indenture shape labor time, they do not know where they come from, what the location of their origin in India. So there are schemes and support given by Government of India for tracing the roots for the people of Indian origin. And for those who are in the Gulf countries, they are given voting rights. They can vote in the Indian embassies when the Indian elections are taking place. And they are also given insurance coverage under the NRI labor scheme. Next slide, please. To conclude, let me just summarize. The Indian diaspora, the NRIs, today the twice migrants, these are the people who are migrated in the 19th and 20th century. They have been successful world over. Remittances back home to the places of origin, to their motherland, and those who are gone under the indentured labor to their ancestral land, family maintenance, to connect back to their homes. You find a vibrant relationship emerging. Over the last 20 years, after the new policy has been initiated, you have a huge linkages, communication. Before pandemic, a large number of people have been visiting, either way, Indians visiting the Indian diaspora countries and vice versa. But as I mentioned earlier, we had a fairly good amount of, I think we are perhaps the largest beneficiaries of remittances from the diaspora. One of the states in India, the southern state, Kerala, gets 15 billion almost on an average before the pandemic. But today there's been a slight decline, but we hope it will increase because migration cannot be stopped. One of the great leaders of migration studies, a professor from Columbia University, mentioned that migration cannot be stopped. International migration has to take place, and maybe the countries may not allow everyone to enter those countries, mostly the developed countries. They will have a selective immigration policy. Today, Indian Indian communication um, uh, and internet technology, people are required everywhere as much as the Indian nurses and the nursing professionals and so on. So, they have a selective migration policy, and even today you'll find slowly the COVID is allowing people to migrate. You will find lots of people migrating every day to different destinations, seeking better opportunities in those countries. So the people of Indian origin in those countries, like Caribbean countries or in African countries, many of them have created better living conditions than their kith and kin who have been left behind in India. Today, their condition is far beyond the conditions, far better than the conditions of people living back in India. Next slide, please. And so many of them have got very suitable employment in many destinations. They have secured higher education and distinguished educational centers globally. And today, Silicon Valley has a huge Indian presence. I think we only compete with the Chinese entrepreneurs, because India has about 20% of entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, while China has about 40% of the people, entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. And they are in a much better position, have a better style of life, and the policy, new initiatives with India has connected with India, with the overseas Indians, and they are made to feel back home, at home. And India today is stretching far beyond India to include Indians everywhere for mutual advancement. And we say today we have a larger India beyond India. Thank you very much for patiently hearing me, and thank all the organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I'll be welcoming your suggestions and any comments or questions, please. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. That is very interesting. So, because Indians diaspora is really, have a lot of experiences compared to Indonesian, which has start 2012 when we have the what you call it, the convention of the Indonesian diaspora. So I think we really need to learn a lot of things from Indian, especially for the policies, because we have different, not yet reached that kind of policies. So thank you so much, Professor That. And the person will be lectured together. So now I would like to invite the third speaker, Her Excellency Sri Astari Raje. So she will talk about the 9 Pearls of Heaven, an arts project. So, and she is a former ambassador of the Indonesian to Bulgaria, ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary of the Republic of Indonesia to the Republic of Bulgaria, and concurrently accredited to the Republic of Albania and the Republic of Macedonia. So she's actually an artist also. So she's her background is from the English department from the University of Indonesia. So she have a lot of training at France painting, University of Minnesota, USA, and also in 1988 painting course at Royal College of the Art in London, and in 1990 obtained Philip Morris Indonesian Art Award. So I think she really have a lot of experiences. And she will be on Zoom also. and also YouTube. So, time is your Ibu Sri Asari Rasu.
Terima kasih Ibu Jackie. Thank you Ibu Jackie. Bapak Rektor UNHI, Bapak Imade Darmiyasa, Ketua Yayasan Parisada Hindu Dharma Indonesia, Bapak wah saya lupa namanya tadi, Ketua Yayasan ya Bu ya, and Bapak Jeki Sofyan from he's the director of ICIIS, professors, academia, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, greetings from Scottsdale, Arizona. I happen to be here in a treatment actually, so I would like to apologize also if I cannot stay too long on this special webinar. And I thank you for inviting me to participate at the 8th International Conference on Interreligious and Intercultural Studies, or ICIIS. Yes, I was previously Indonesian ambassador to Bulgaria, Albania, and North Macedonia, 2016 and until 2020. And now I'm a professional artist. I continue my profession as a professional artist. And I will present you with a virtual artwork that I did previously. Not previously though. This is actually my latest artwork, which was completed in last December 2021. It is said that the God is an artist, and the world is his artwork. Artists try to enrich the heavenly attributes of creativity in their soul, in the path towards God. I have been honored to call myself artist from Indonesia. The 9 Pearls of Heaven, which I will present at the ICIIS 2022 today, is my latest virtual art installation and performance created for the Fasilitas Bidang Kebudayaan 2021 Kemendikbudristek, as well as for my upcoming exhibition at the National Gallery in Jakarta and preparation for my book in 2022. In fact, right after coming back to Indonesia from my diplomatic mission, I started working on my art project about the Indonesian Spice Queen, which was actually, one of them is Raina Bokiraja. She is supposed to be a hero, I guess, in Indonesia of her achievement during her tenure as the Queen of Ternate. And she has a heroic achievement actually to fight against the Spanish at the time that came to take our spices. So that was her, and there was another actually queen from Japara, who is a queen of maritime. So I was making a project of several queens that has been unnoticed, or didn't give any position as a women's hero during that time of trying to protect Indonesia, which is around the 16th century. Both are from the 16th century. So I started with the Spice Queen, attending a regular soul-to-soul spiritual online group meeting. It became a motivation for me to outline a journey for the Queen to meet with a great spiritual woman of our history, religion, and mythology that were barely discussed. Yet they are our holy women, mothers of the universe, a source of feminine force that will guide us if we seek for their help. On the other hand, due to the pandemic of COVID-19, the world is still suffering from the impact in all aspects globally. We lost friends, family, and sadly, I also lost my beloved brother. Looking into the Javanese tradition, I found the healing ritual called ruatan that is performed for any misfortune, disasters, or mishaps in our tradition. This became another inspiration to include the ritual ruatan semesta, or healing the universe, into the artwork as well. As Indonesia is hosting the G20 meeting this year, I was able to suggest our Director General of Culture to perform our Ruatan Bumi, healing the universe, during the G20 Cultural Minister meeting at Borobudur Temple, Yogyakarta in September 2022. I hope that will materialize. In fact, the story of the Queen's journey is very simple. During the early golden age of Indonesia in the 13th to 16th century, when our spices were well sought throughout the world, from East Indonesia, the Spice Queen travels on the sea to the west. She meets with the 9 holy women in different lands, where she acquires the qualities that have distinguished them from the ordinary women. The Queen comes to know the core personalities, attributes, and teachings of the holy women. The virtual art installations of the 9 holy women appeared in a form of wooden wayang golek puppets, where I dressed them all in rich costumes and attributes from various parts of Indonesia. They are as follows. One is Devi Sri, wearing kabaya top with batik sarong and attributes. She is our oldest Javanese goddess. To this day, she is still being worshipped. She represents life and fertility. Asia, wearing costume from South Sumatra, is the wife of Pharaoh, and Moses is her adopted son. She represents strength, sincerity, and good instinct. The third one was Kuan Yin, or Kuan Yin, wearing Indonesian Chinese costume. She is the Buddhist holy figure, symbolizing peace and awareness. Fourth, Mariam, wearing coastal Javanese batik costume, is the mother of Jesus. She symbolizes purity and chastity. Fifth is Khadija, wearing kabaya and batik skirt with batik basure shawl, is the wife of Prophet Muhammad. She symbolizes strong determination and wisdom. And sixth is Saraswati, wearing Balinese songket, green cloth, and other attributes. She is the Hindu goddess of knowledge and creativity. The seventh is Fatima, wearing combination of kabaya, sarong, and batik basure, is the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And she is the wife of Hazrat Ali, symbolizes loyalty and upbringing good children. Hajar, number 8 is Hajar, wearing North Sumatran Ulas costume and attributes, is the wife of Abraham, symbolizing patience and endurance. Number 9, Tahire, wearing Sumba costume and attributes from East Indonesia, or NTT, is the sacred female figure of the Baha'i faith, symbolizing freedom and emancipation. Paying tribute to the mystical queen of the South Sea, Kanjeng Ratu Selatan, I also include her in the story, but the queen of the spices could not meet with her. According to the local belief, publicly she does not reveal herself. Therefore, they always kept the numbers uneven, as the next even number is always reserved for her preference. To include this short piece that is more artistic than academic, it should be noted that the 10 spiritual women on this mystical journey have different attributes. The differences and multiplicity of the characters are based on the Indonesian motto, unity in diversity. It's representing the unity of womanhood, excuse me, of womanhood and the character of a perfect woman. All the holy ladies represent different aspects of a complete beauty, that love appears as a result of such attribute. Indeed, all women with different colors and costumes of different islands are from one united land, like our beloved Indonesia. In a better word, it can be said that all humanity comes from one source of unity to the realm of multiplicity to spread love, peace, and compassion on earth. Thank you. Enjoy the virtual art installation performance after this, so you will all see what I was talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Astari. We will continue with your video, YouTube. So, organizing committee, please play for the YouTube.
Gusti Kang Maha Kawasa paring mono kanugrahan sayekti keselamatan kang lumintu sarta kenging parokta rahayu sumrambah bangsa sak donya tebih saking daru beksi
Aku Dewi Sri. Segala kehidupan dan kesuburan adalah aku. Aku Siti Asia, istri Fir'aun, yang tulus beriman dalam welas asih semesta. Aku Kuan Im. Aku akan senantiasa hadir dalam setiap pendamaian antara engkau dan deritamu. Aku Maryam, Ibunda Yesus. Bukan nasib buruk menjadi aku, melainkan kesucian takdir lahirnya juru selamat. Aku Siti Khadijah, istri Nabi Muhammad, hadir sebagai wujud kebijaksanaan dalam setiap angan manusia. Aku Saraswati, pengetahuan dan kreativitas adalah aku sebagai cahaya dalam setiap kegelapan. Aku Siti Fatimah, putri Nabi Muhammad. Aku hadir dalam wujud kesetiaan dan juga pengabdian. Aku Siti Hajar, istri Ibrahim. Dalam ketahanan raga dan keteguhan jiwa mula, aku singgah. Aku Tahire, perempuan suci kepercayaan Bahai. Aku akan menemani engkau dalam setiap jalan perubahan.
Banjir air mata menyaksikan ibu bumi dirangkul sang angkara. Ketidakadilan seakan raja yang memegang kendali atas segala-galanya.
Kian hanyut seluruh harap dalam gelap. Dilindungikah para pemilik rahim?
Sang waktu menunjukkan ketidakmudaannya. Bumi ini sudah terlalu berteriak. Maka diturunkanlah aku dalam wujud kemurnian, ketegaran, keikhlasan, welas asih, kesuburan, dan kemakmuran.
Haruskah aku terus bergandeng tangan dengan kebisuan, berpegang erat pada ketidakpastian? Ku tempuh jalanan berduri yang tiada berujung, bergulir di lautan pasir. Ku selami riuhnya samudra batu.
Oh ragaku, diberkatilah seluruh pemilik rahim yang kini atau bahkan kelak akan kusinggahi. Selesaikan cerita pengorbananmu, tebuslah karma semesta. Akan kutemani engkau dalam setiap luka dan derita. Kelak, semesta akan mengenalmu sebagai mutiara dari surga.
Siapa yang melanjutkan, siapa yang selanjutnya, takkan dia tak menjamahnya. Siapa raga kau pinta, siapa raga kau singgah,
you very much, Ibu. It's very interesting and really enjoy.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you, Bu Yekti. And I hope the Holy Ladies bless us all and our nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night. So I'll check out now, yeah, Bu Yekti?
Yeah, okay. So I will continue with the following speaker. Thank you so much, Ibu Astari. So let me continue with the following speaker. It's Associate Professor Dr. Pamela Allen. So she will talk about the localized commentary of Menjomblong. So she's from the University of Tasmania, Australia, and PhD from the University of Sydney 2000, and Master of Art from the Southeast Asian Theatres University of Hawaii, and also in 2010 she was the Associate Dean, Faculty of Art, University of Tasmania, and from 2007 until now she is the Associate Professor of Indonesians in the same university. So of course she publishes a lot, but one I just give you one example is on being Japanese in Suriname. So it's also Japanese diaspora. So it's very, very interesting topic. So I would like to invite Professor Pamela Allen. Are you using online, Prof?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a fairly hard act to follow. That was a beautiful, beautiful performance. Thank you. And thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you to the organising committee of ICIIS and distinguished guests. And thank you too to the previous speakers who I think have set the scene beautifully for the theme of this conference. And as just mentioned, I also have a particular interest in the diaspora, both particularly in Suriname and New Caledonia. But today I've taken the topic of gender as my topic for today's talk. I'm just going to change my view here. I'm not sure if everyone can see me at the moment. Still on?
Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm visible there on the screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
PowerPoint.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not using PowerPoint, so it's just going
okay. So
yeah, that's fine. So my talk today is about the Balinese writer and journalist Oka Rusmini, who I've known for a long time and whose work I've long admired. And a while ago, I wrote an analysis of the short stories of the Indonesian writer Yulianti Farid, in which I identified some similarities between with Oka Rusmini, in that both these writers have a very strong sense of space, often domestic space. And I referred to Lili Farid in that earlier article as a kind of feminist geographer. And I thought that was perhaps the tack I would take in this paper, examining the idea of Oka Rusmini as a feminist geographer. But a little while ago, I read an Australian author called Bernard Salt, who tried to describe his job as in the field of journalism. And he described his career as being localised commentary on the cultural evolution and prospects of the Australian people. And it struck me at the time that this was a more apt description of what Oka Rusmini does, localised commentary on the cultural evolution and prospects of the Indonesian people, with a particular focus on Balinese. And it's a commentary that finds its sharpest focus in Oka's latest book called Mencoblong, which is a book of essays covering a wide range of topics pertaining to cultural evolution and prospects. And the narrator, Mencoblong, is none other than Oka Rusmini herself. Oka is unambiguous in her statement that in Menchoblong is Oka Rusmini. The issues covered in the essays are diverse, but broadly speaking cover social justice, politics and religion. As one might expect, the role and fate of women get a lot of coverage, but what makes these essays unique is that the world, in particular Indonesia, is viewed through the lens of a commentator who is a woman, a mother and a press worker or a journalist. So in my paper I'm discussing how Menchoblong demonstrates that women writers in Indonesia are not simply pelipulara or comforting storytellers. Rather, the multiple roles they hold in life equip them to expose, question and critique the injustice, inconsistencies and absurdities they encounter in daily life. The essays in Menchoblong form a kind of Socratic dialogue between the narrator, Menchoblong, and either her neighbour, her friend or her son. In an understated manner and a frequently laconic tone, we're reminded of the roles Menchoblong fulfills and the expectations demanded of those roles. As well as being a woman, a mother and a journalist, she describes herself as a wife and, notwithstanding her relatively youthful age of 50 years, Manula, a senior citizen. The opening paragraph of the essay, Epaulet, sums up the general bewilderment Menchoblong apparently feels at the state of affairs in Indonesia. And I'm quote, Menchoblong becomes an abnormal woman whenever she hears the news or reads the newspaper. It feels as if her heart stops beating. The country seems like a nation with a constant supply of news stories, stories that make no sense to her. Could it be because she's getting older? Because she measures everything against her own ideals as a woman, a wife, and a senior citizen? But the reader is soon disabused of any notion that a woman/wife/senior citizen would be meek and mild in their response to such news stories. Menchoblong is fierce in her attacks on anything she deems to be lemot or lemah otak, dumb or stupid. All government policies, she declares, seem lemot, as is everything on the news, as is the president. The rules and regulations around finding a school for one's children are lemot. And inevitably, it is women who suffer on account of everything being lemot. Women are the ones who have to figure out how to feed their families when the price of everyday necessities keeps going up. Women are the ones who lie awake at night worrying about their children's schooling. Menchoblong holds out faint hope that social media might be the way to make governments accountable for being lemot. After all, social media is the forum where people feel most free to express their views and criticisms of things that are lemot. But then she remembers that social media also provided space for 15-year-old girls to sell themselves. The essays in this collection are underpinned by Menchoblong's perpetual question, what is happening to the people of this country? Or in Indonesian, apakah yang sedang melanda manusia-manusia di negeri ini? There are multiple answers to this question, it seems. Time does not permit me to cover them all, so in this presentation I focus on three areas: on being a woman, on being Indonesian, and on not making sense. First of all, on being a woman. While Menchoblong writes with obvious love and respect for the two men in her life, her husband and her son, she's also frank about their different worldviews, which for her is clearly gendered. Women do always see things differently, I'm quoting, and men usually find them difficult to understand. Menchoblong too feels that the two women in her house, one of them her child and the other her husband, are often of the view that her various ideas don't make sense. It's clear that despite her many roles and talents, Menchoblong has found it difficult to break down the gendered roles within the family. This is a universal phenomenon. Expectations of her as a wife and mother will ring true for women everywhere. And I quote, what if one day Menchoblong didn't cook, had coffee and cake in a cafe, then went to see Man of Steel at the cinema and had dinner at her favourite restaurant? And we know what the answer might be. Menchoblong follows through though. She goes to the movie and it gets her thinking again about familial roles. In modern Indonesia, she reflects, the father is always synonymous with the complex world of work and he cannot be disturbed, while the mother runs around performing multiple roles in order to keep the family intact and running smoothly in accordance with prevailing social norms. So turning to on being Indonesian, how difficult it really is to be a citizen of this country, or alangkah sulitnya sesungguhnya dari rakyat di negeri ini, Mencoblong laments in the essay Hamba. The reasons for this lament are frequently and unambiguously stated throughout the essays. In Insult or Hina, for example, she bemoans the culture of knee-jerk response to criticism that she sees as a characteristic of governance in contemporary Indonesia, citing a law, UU MD 3, that prevents individuals, groups, or legal entities from undermining the honour of the Indonesian Parliament and members of Parliament. She can only ask, does that mean that constructive criticism that has led to progress in this nation is actually considered an insult? If that is the case, when will this country progress? If criticisms raised by the people as the holders of the highest sovereignty are silenced and considered insulting. What is clearly painful for Mencoblong is that she loves her country, which makes the absurdities and inconsistencies she witnesses on a daily basis even harder to bear. What makes this beloved country so flawed? Everything feels weird and nothing makes sense. Or to use the Indonesian, apakah yang membuat negeri yang dicintai ini begitu penuh cercap? Semua hal jadi terasa aneh dan tidak masuk akal. And are not making sense. Governance is by no means the only thing that does not make sense to Mencoblong. Another thing that constantly doesn't make sense, or tidak masuk akal, to her is Indonesia's education system. This is a conundrum usually viewed through the lens of her own experience in finding schools and seeking the best education for her son. She and her friend are confounded by what they see as entrenched corruption and inequity in the Indonesian education system. Mencoblong ponders, does it make sense that a child with mediocre abilities all of a sudden becomes so intelligent? Mencoblong knows why, she gets it. This is the era in which everything is instant. Everything is fast, on a constant roll. Like a ball that has no master, everything is in free fall. That's our education system. So how do we go about measuring a child's intelligence? Furthermore, having grown up in a family where education was highly valued and stressed as a means to become a better person, Mencoblong is confused at the current state of affairs whereby, quote, it's actually most highly educated people with high academic scores and degrees from overseas who are causing chaos in this country. Mencoblong also takes aim at the senselessness of terrorism in a poignant passage in which we are left no doubt that she is speaking as a mother. How could a family in this country steer their children towards dying by blowing themselves up, by assembling deadly objects in their own home? Life right now makes no sense at all. The house as a place of shelter is turned into a place to make bombs. How is it that a family could be formed for the purpose of giving birth to soldiers? What war are those bomber fighters actually fighting? Are those bomber families actually fighting? Unafraid to address normally taboo topics in her localised commentary on Indonesia, Mencoblong asks, is it really true that religious life in Indonesia is peaceful? Do people practice their religion in a civil way? Do they respect differences and beliefs and the way others approach God? Religion, she declares, has suddenly become a new directive that is so exclusive and sensitive, it constrains the life of people in Indonesia. And those are very brave words. So to conclude my brief overview today, Mencoblong is bold, fierce, and unafraid to tackle the difficult questions she faces each day as a citizen of Indonesia. In her localised commentary, she asks questions that are usually left unasked. She unmasks absurdities that are usually overlooked, and she challenges anything that is lemot. And she does these things as the alter ego of Oka Rusmini, who interprets contemporary Indonesia as, among other things, a woman, a mother, and a journalist. Mencoblong / Oka Rusmini is proud to be a wife, proud to be a mother, proud to be a writer and journalist. For her, these multiple roles make her a complete woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Aaron. It's a very interesting story, very interesting presentation. I will continue the following speaker. So, Ibu Dewi Maria Ulfa. So, Ibu Dewi Maria Ulfa is the Deputy Regent of the TV Regency, East Java, and for the she graduated from the Technic Electro ICIIS 2005, and her experience in organization is as a Vice Secretary IPC Fatayat NU 2014 to 2019, and Chairwoman of the PC Fatayat NU, and also she is a lecturer at the UNISNA 2008 and 2011. So I would like to invite, I think Ibu Dewi will be offline. So I would like to invite Ibu Dewi for 20 minutes. So time is your Ibu.
Mohon izin, Ibu Moderator, saya kali ini tampil paling beda. Saya menyampaikan pakai bahasa Indonesia karena saya lulus sejak 2005, sudah tidak sering memakai bahasa Inggris karena saya menghadapi masyarakat langsung yang mana keseharian lebih sering pakai bahasa Indonesia maupun bahasa Jawa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang terhormat Bapak Rektor UNHI, Profesor Dr. Hewan Imade Damriasa. Yang saya hormati Ketua Yayasan UNHI, Profesor Dr. Iketut Ardana. Yang saya hormati Ibu Ayu Kartika Dewi. Yang saya hormati Profesor Dr. Wening Udasmoro, Bapak Profesor Chandra, yang saya hormati Dr. Pamela Allen, yang saya hormati pula Dr. Diki Sofyan, yang saya hormati Profesor Yakti Maunati, para dekan-dekan di lingkungan UNHI, rekan-rekan dari IAIN Kediri, serta Bapak Ibu para peserta seminar yang saya banggakan. Saya mengucapkan terima kasih yang tak terhingga kepada Bapak Ibu semua atas kesempatan yang diberikan kepada saya untuk sedikit berbagi pengalaman dengan Bapak Ibu semua. Saya hanya sedikit berbagi untuk mengajak para kaum perempuan untuk lebih berani mengambil peran-peran penting, peran-peran strategis yang ada di masyarakat, karena hari ini populasi perempuan hampir sama dengan laki-laki, sedangkan posisi-posisi strategis masih banyak diduduki atau dijabat oleh para kaum laki-laki. Dan saya mohon izin kepada para kaum laki-laki untuk mengizinkan kami para perempuan menduduki beberapa pos-pos strategis yang ada di masyarakat hari ini. Jadi saya memang latar belakang saya agak tidak nyambung. Dulu saya kuliah di teknik elektro ITS, lulus tahun 2005. Setelah itu saya berkarir di perbankan, akan tetapi saya jadi aktivis organisasi sejak saya usia mahasiswa tahun 2000 sampai hari ini. Saya 2 kali menjabat sebagai ketua organisasi perempuan, dulu di IPPNO di Kabupaten Kediri, itu Ikatan Pelajar Putrinya Nahdlatul Ulama tingkat kabupaten, dan hari ini saya juga sebagai ketua Fatayat NU, perempuan NU usia 20 sampai 45 tahun di Kabupaten Kediri. Dan berkat pengalaman saya di organisasi, saya dipilih atau dilamar sebagai wakil bupati. Jadi bukan karena latar belakang pendidikan saya di teknik ataupun di perbankan. Izin menyampaikan mengapa kepemimpinan perempuan itu penting hari ini. Karena mohon izin, perempuan dikenal dapat mengambil keputusan yang berani dan bijaksana. Jadi kami para perempuan itu ada istilah the power of emak-emak. Jadi kalau sudah punya tekad, punya niat, perempuan itu sudah tidak ada yang berani menghalangi. Jadi teguh, kokoh itu dengan pendiriannya. Dan hasil dari sebuah organisasi yang dipimpin oleh perempuan dapat memiliki tim yang lebih kooperatif dan memiliki rasa kekeluargaan. Karena kami para perempuan masih memikirkan perasaan orang ya, jadi lebih menghargai kalau kita masih mau mendengar suara-suara bawahan, biasanya seperti itu. Jadi kalau perempuan dikasih pos sebagai pemimpin, beliau mampu menciptakan tim yang penuh kekeluargaan dan kooperatif. 5 alasan kenapa perempuan harus menjadi pemimpin. Yang saya sampaikan tadi, dapat mengambil keputusan dengan berani. Jadi kaum perempuan itu kalau sudah berani memutuskan sesuatu, dia pasti bertanggung jawab terhadap resiko atas keputusannya. Yang kedua, memiliki nilai kepemimpinan yang sama dengan laki-laki. Jadi sebenarnya perempuan nilai kepemimpinannya sama, malah beliau lebih ramah, lebih peduli dan kreatif. Jadi kaum perempuan itu suka basa-basinya. Kalau laki-laki kan sukanya to the point. Jadi kita lebih ramah. Jadi kalau perempuan memimpin itu biasanya komunikasinya lebih bagus. Meskipun mungkin bagi kaum laki-laki dianggap terlalu banyak basa-basinya, tapi sebenarnya itu adalah pola komunikasi untuk membangun kedekatan yang dilakukan oleh kami perempuan. Peduli juga, jadi lebih peka kalau ada permasalahan ataupun keadaan dari orang lain, biasanya perempuan lebih peka, lebih peduli, lebih menyentuh seperti itu, dan juga kreatif. Jadi perempuan itu sudah terbiasa melakukan banyak kegiatan secara bersamaan karena dia juga dibebani oleh tugas domestik. Pastinya untuk hal-hal tertentu dia lebih kreatif, lebih telaten juga. Dapat berkomunikasi dengan baik, pastinya itu. Jadi pola komunikasi yang dilakukan oleh perempuan biasanya sangat baik. Hanya kalau perempuan yang pendiam itu biasanya karena kurangnya jam terbang, jadi harus dipaksa untuk sering-sering tampil. Jadi di organisasi sebagai alat atau media kita untuk melatih komunikasi kita. Yang keempat, merupakan seorang yang mentor yang baik, bisa jadi contoh atau pemimpin yang baik dengan orang di sekitarnya. Biasanya kalau pemimpin perempuan itu memang tidak main perintah, tapi dia memberikan contoh atau teladan inspirasi bagi bawahannya. Sebagai suatu misal, mungkin dia lebih disiplin waktu, disiplin proses, dia nggak mau terlalu cerewet, karena kalau pemimpin biasanya perempuan cenderung dengan cerewetnya, tapi kalau terlalu cerewet juga tidak disukai. Karenanya pemimpin perempuan biasanya lebih pada kita harus jadi inspirasi atau teladan, karena itu orang pasti akan lebih segan. Yang kelima, memiliki kemampuan untuk memecahkan berbagai permasalahan, ya karena terbiasa. Biasanya kalau kaum perempuan itu kan ngurus rumah tangga juga berkarir, jadi dia sudah terbiasa melakukan sesuatu secara bersamaan dengan berbagai peran. Jadi kalau untuk memecahkan berbagai masalah biasanya tidak kaget, tidak panik, karena dia sudah terbiasa untuk dibebani dengan beberapa tugas. Bagaimana kepemimpinan seorang perempuan? Seorang perempuan pemimpin harus memiliki sikap asertif, yaitu penuh percaya diri. Nah, ini yang biasanya jadi permasalahan dari semua perempuan. Tingkat kepercayaan dirinya seorang perempuan itu sangat kurang. Jadi perlu didorong, perlu dimotivasi bagaimana dia berani. Biasanya perempuan itu tidak mau menunjukkan kemampuannya, tapi dia baru berani ketika dipuji atau diberikan apresiasi. Jadi kita yang harus peka untuk memberikan tempat atau panggung bagi perempuan. Jadi saya dua kali ini memimpin organisasi perempuan, biasanya begitu. Kalau tidak ditunjuk, dia tidak mau untuk menunjukkan diri, mengusulkan dirinya tampil. Jadi kita yang harus memberikan ruang kepada perempuan itu. Tapi ketika sudah diberikan tanggung jawab atau dia bisa menunjukkan kualitasnya. Seperti itulah perempuan. Memiliki keyakinan yang kuat akan tindakannya dan mau menyatakan perasaan dan pendapatnya. Ya, itu juga. Itu yang kadang sering tidak dilakukan oleh perempuan. Dia merasa minder dulu. Padahal dia punya potensi yang harus kita berikan dukungan adalah pada itu. Jadi sebisa mungkin perempuan-perempuan berada pada komunitas yang mampu mendukung dirinya untuk maju dan berkembang. Selanjutnya, untuk menjadi seorang pemimpin tidak hanya dibutuhkan bakat. Memang ada pemimpin yang dilahirkan sebagai pemimpin. Akan tetapi ada pula pemimpin yang lahir karena keluarganya seorang pemimpin. Ada pula pemimpin yang dibentuk dengan sendirinya, mungkin dengan pengalaman di organisasinya atau keluarganya, seperti itu. Kalau saya ini bukan dari keluarga pemimpin juga, karena orang tua saya bukan politisi. Saya baru jadi politisi juga sekarang. Tapi pengalaman di organisasi saya yang membentuk saya seperti itu. Dan itu pun bisa dibentuk menurut saya sejak kecil. Kalau orang tua tidak membeda-bedakan untuk peran dan tanggung jawab putra-putrinya, kalau putra biasanya diberikan kepercayaan dan kebebasan lebih dari perempuan. Sebenarnya itu tidak boleh, karena perempuan pun sebenarnya sejak kecil harus dididik dia mandiri, dia bertanggung jawab dan dia berani. Kalau dari kecil dia dididik untuk menjadi perempuan yang manja, perempuan yang penakut, pastinya nantinya ketika dia dewasa dia tidak berkarakter untuk menjadi seorang leader. Jadi menurut saya sejak kecil sudah diberikan porsi yang sama, bagaimana seorang perempuan maupun laki-laki itu punya kesempatan yang sama untuk menjadi seorang pemimpin. Kadang masyarakat kita masih berpikir bahwasanya anak laki-laki yang harus punya tanggung jawab lebih besar daripada perempuan. Kalau perempuan biasanya tanggung jawabnya agak dikurangi, jadi terlalu diproteksi. Karena itu yang berpengaruh kadang ketika dia sudah masuk di dunia kerja dan di masyarakat, dia mentalnya bukan untuk jadi petarung, tapi karena sudah terbiasa dengan sesuatu yang nyaman. Jadi kita harus berani keluar dari zona nyaman. Lantas apa yang harus dilakukan sebagai perempuan pemimpin? Perempuan pemimpin harus mampu membangun personal brandingnya yang positif, baik sebagai individu, sebagai ibu, mitra suami, sebagai pemimpin ataupun pelayan masyarakat. Jadi pemimpin perempuan dia harus bisa menunjukkan dirinya kalau dirinya layak dijadikan inspirasi. Mulai dari segala baik ucapan, tingkah laku, perbuatannya harus mampu menginspirasi orang lain untuk mencontoh apa yang dilakukan oleh pemimpin itu sendiri. Perempuan harus memahami konsep diri, yaitu kesadaran, yaitu sikap, pemahaman tentang siapa diri kita, apa cita-cita kita, apa kekurangan, kelebihan, kemampuan, dan kekuatan. Jadi sejak kecil orang tua harus bisa memahami karakter maupun passion dari anaknya masing-masing. Jadi nanti mengarahkannya, membentuknya itu tidak keliru, tidak salah. Kadang saya pun dulu ambil jurusan di pas kuliah itu juga ikut apa kata orang tua saat itu, karena kalau dulu teknik itu kayak bergengsi seperti itu ya. Kadang mindset kita ketika sudah jadi mahasiswa kalau kuliah di teknik nanti pengennya jadi engineer, pengennya ya. Padahal tidak seperti itu juga. Ternyata ketika hari ini saya aktif di organisasi, ternyata posisi politik itu harus menjadi bagian dari kita, seperti itu. Jadi kadang mindset kita yang terlalu sempit. Kalau saya kuliah di hukum, saya jadi orang hukum. Kalau saya kuliah di pendidikan, saya harus jadi guru. Padahal tidak seperti itu. Kita harus membuka diri untuk memasuki dunia-dunia yang mungkin kita bisa lebih maksimal pada dunia tersebut. Apakah di Indonesia seorang perempuan tidak boleh menjadi pemimpin? Pemimpin di Indonesia mempunyai hak yang sama dengan laki-laki, terutama dalam menduduki kepemimpinan, meskipun jumlahnya belum sebanding dengan laki-laki. Di Indonesia sudah pernah ada presiden perempuan, Ibu Megawati Soekarno Putri. Hari ini alhamdulillah ketua DPR RI kita juga perempuan yang menginspirasi kita. Di Kediri pernah ada bupati perempuan, Bu Dr. Haryanti, beliau dokter juga jadi bupati. Terus saya wakil bupati pertama perempuan juga di Kediri. Terus kepala dinas, kepala sekolah, kepala desa, camat, hari ini juga ada banyak yang dari perempuan. Salah satu kendala di Indonesia adalah adanya kontradiksi antara karir dan keluarga. Jadi masih banyak persepsi di masyarakat kita bahwasanya perempuan dipaksa memilih karir atau keluarga, biasanya seperti itu. Nah, ini adalah persepsi yang keliru karena tanggung jawab keluarga tidak hanya dibebankan pada perempuan. Mengasuh anak, membersihkan rumah, itu bukan hanya tanggung jawab perempuan, tapi dua-duanya harus bisa dapat porsi yang sama. Perbedaan gaya kepemimpinan perempuan dan laki-laki. Tadi menurut American Psychological Association, wanita cenderung memiliki gaya kepemimpinan yang lebih kooperatif dan partisipatif. Jadi perempuan itu lebih mau mengajak bekerja sama kalau sesama orang lain, baik perempuan maupun laki-laki, dan melibatkan. Jadi masih ada kadang perasaan ewoh pakewuh kalau nanti kalau tidak dilibatkan nggak enak. Tapi kalau laki-laki tidak. Kayak kepemimpinan kalau laki-laki cenderung memberikan perintah dan mengontrol, begitu ya, lebih apa ya, direction seperti itu. Kalau perempuan memang lebih pakai hati. Mereka kalau laki-laki lebih berorientasi pada tugas dan pengarahan, sedangkan kalau perempuan lebih demokratis, menerima masukan, saran, kritik dari para bawahannya atau orang-orang di sekitarnya. Sistem rewardnya pun beda dengan perempuan dan laki-laki. Kalau wanita itu lebih sering pada memotivasi karyawan mereka dengan membantu mereka menemukan harga diri dan kepuasan dalam bekerja. Jadi tidak melulu tentang hadiah ataupun bonus, tapi penghargaan kita, memperlakukan bawahan kita dengan baik, mengapresiasi kinerjanya, itu sangat dibutuhkan. Kalau laki-laki kan cenderung reward sama punishment. Kalau kamu kerjanya bagus tak kasih bonus, kalau enggak ya kamu tak down job, kan seperti itu. Tapi kalau perempuan enggak, lebih halus. Jadi lebih mampu memberikan motivasi yang kuat kepada timnya. Jadi hubungannya tidak hanya sekedar pekerjaan, tapi lebih hubungan yang kekeluargaan yang dibangun oleh pemimpin perempuan seperti itu. Selanjutnya adalah self branding. Pria cenderung pandai membranding diri mereka sendiri. Jadi para kaum laki-laki ini kalau dia berprestasi itu berani menunjukkan prestasinya, memamerkan prestasinya kepada semua orang. Cerita saya ini berhasil ini. Tapi kalau perempuan enggak. Perempuan cenderung bersikap rendah hati atau diam tentang prestasi mereka sendiri. Pengalaman kami juga pas kampanye itu rasanya kalau kita harus promosi diri kita itu nggak enak, tapi yang mempromosikan orang lain enak. Masa kita harus menceritakan kebaikan kita kepada orang lain? Itu yang saya rasakan. Jadi seperti itu. Jadi kalau saya dulu pernah jadi tim sukses, pede, mengkampanyekan calon itu pede, tapi ketika mengkampanyekan diri saya sendiri itu rasanya ada sesuatu yang masa saya terlalu memuji diri sendiri. Itulah perempuan. Selanjutnya tantangan yang dihadapi pemimpin perempuan. Ini susah untuk percaya diri pada lingkungan yang didominasi oleh laki-laki. Jadi ketika perempuan ditunjuk sebagai pemimpin pada lingkungan yang didominasi laki-laki, biasanya memang diremehkan, awal-awal diremehkan, dan dia pasti merasa saya mampu apa enggak ya memimpin laki-laki, seperti itu. Yang kedua, tantangannya ingin didengar. Jadi perempuan itu selalu ingin didengar pendapatnya, curhatannya, keluh kesahnya, permasalahannya. Dan kadang laki-laki tidak semua ingin mendengar, seperti itu. Terus yang ketiga, mengatasi imposter syndrome. Jadi perempuan kebanyakan juga meskipun dia sudah diakui kualitasnya, dia tetap merasa sudah benar apa tidak ya yang saya lakukan. Jangan-jangan saya khawatir ini tidak pas, ini kurang apa. Biasanya itulah yang dihadapi oleh pemimpin perempuan. Yang keempat, ingin didukung oleh sesama wanita. Nah, perempuan itu suka dipuji, apalagi yang memuji adalah kaumnya sendiri. Jadi kalau yang memuji sesama perempuan itu kita melihatnya tulus, sesuai fakta, tidak ada kecemburuan. Tapi kalau yang memuji laki-laki biasanya karena ada tendensi yang lain seperti itu, tidak murni. Yang kelima, ingin diberlakukan sama. Ya, kita perempuan pastinya ingin diberlakukan sama, tidak dianggap lemah oleh kaum laki-laki. Tidak ada keterbatasan karena fisik kita, seperti itu. Masalah yang dihadapi oleh pemimpin perempuan biasanya isolasi dan kesepian. Kadang kalau kita sudah dianggap pemimpin itu, orang mau mendekati kan agak-agak jaga jarak seperti itu. Padahal kita tidak ingin seperti itu. Bermasalah dengan founder perusahaan, ini biasanya untuk di pemimpin yang di perusahaan. Ketakutan akan kegagalan, itu pasti. Jadi pemimpin perempuan selalu dibayang-bayangi bagaimana kalau saya tidak mampu. Stres dan tekanan kerja, nah, itu pasti. Memimpin tim dalam ketidakpastian. Jadi kalau yang namanya memimpin selalu banyak sekali permasalahan-permasalahan seperti hari ini juga ketika kita tiba-tiba dilanda pandemi COVID-19, hal baru yang baru kita alami selama sekian tahun. Sehingga kita menyesuaikan diri dengan berbagai perubahan-perubahan termasuk perubahan perilaku hari ini. Jadi kalau pemimpin harus siap untuk menyesuaikan diri dengan kondisi yang baru. Terus manajemen waktu yang salah. Nah, ini jadi sering kalinya dihadapkan dengan banyak kegiatan-kegiatan mendadak yang mungkin lebih urgent. Jadi kalau manajemen waktunya tidak bagus, pasti akan berimbas kepada hasil. Cara mengatasi tantangan dan masalah. Jadi cara mengatasi tantangan dan masalah oleh pemimpin perempuan, yang pertama, menemukan kelompok yang membuat kamu merasa aman untuk bercerita tentang tantangan yang kamu hadapi. Ya, kita harus memang menemukan tempat atau wadah atau organisasi yang pas untuk kita, sesuai dengan karakter kita, yang bisa membangun diri kita. Jadi jangan sampai kita masuk komunitas yang salah. Masih banyak di luar sana yang mungkin salah pergaulan, salah teman yang itu bisa berakibat fatal. Jadi perempuan harus cerdas memilih dan memilah komunitas mana yang bisa membuat dirinya berkembang dan maju. Yang kedua, mengenal diri sendiri lebih dalam untuk menemukan kemampuan uniknya yang dimiliki agar dapat bermanfaat dalam membuat keputusan yang bijak. Jadi kita juga harus mengenali diri kita sendiri. Kita cocoknya di mana, passion kita apa, pasnya kita sebagai apa. Itu kita harus menemukan. Kalau kita sudah tahu pasti passion saya di sini, saya lebih menikmati bergaul dengan orang-orang yang sefrekuensi, yang pikirannya sama. Yang ketiga, menemukan mentor yang tepat untuk mengasah keterampilan praktis. Memang kita harus butuh mentor yang mengarahkan kita, jalan kita, langkah-langkah kita, menuntun kita, termasuk mungkin pasangan hidup. Jadi masih banyak juga perempuan yang sebenarnya berpotensi akan tetapi tidak didukung oleh pasangannya untuk karir yang lebih tinggi. Masih ada para kaum laki-laki yang tidak ingin tersaingi pasangannya dalam hal karir. Jadi kita perempuan memang harus bisa menempatkan diri, menempatkan posisi. Kita di karir boleh tinggi, tapi di rumah sebagai istri kita harus tetap memposisikan diri kita taat pada suami, seperti itu. Kalau kita sama-sama, kadang memang perempuan ada ya, kalau karirnya lebih tinggi dia sudah tidak mau patuh sama suaminya. Ya, itu yang harus dirubah juga. Jadi memang pemimpin perempuan dia harus semuanya menjadi inspirasi, termasuk pengetahuan ilmunya, tingkah lakunya, juga kualitas ibadahnya. Mungkin itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Mohon maaf bila ada kekurangan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu.
Thank you very much, Ibu. I just make it just to translate it only for very short time. So I think Ibu Dewi actually suggests that women should be brave enough to participate in the strategy position, because now it's still dominated by men in the strategic position, like in the political position, etc. And women leadership is important, so we suggest 5 points, like so women is actually great teamwork, and also great to make a decision, so also hard work and great communication, and strategic, and also solve the problem. But the problem for women is actually lacking of self-confidence. So that's what she says. So and women, so parents actually should, should teach that the child should have the same opportunity between men and women from the beginning. So we will have the capacity for that. So, and then she suggests that the women should show the positive image. But of course, we mentioned about the obstacle of the women is between career and the family. So maybe that's the one that she suggests. Of course, a lot, but I just make it short for that. So now I would like to invite Dr. Jane Alstrans. So the title of her presentation is Power, Class, and Gender in the Balinese tourism industry. A preliminary discussion on women's economic participation. So she's actually from the University of New England, Australia, and PhD from the School of Language and Cultural Study, University of Queensland. And she actually, in terms of awards, she received several awards. In 2017, she received Australian Multicultural Art Award winner, and also in 2017 National Australia Indonesia Language Award. So I would like to invite her, but I think she will use the video, right? So the organizing committee, please play the video of her.
Om Swastiastu. Hello everyone. Salam sejahtera dari Australia. So my name is Jane Allstrand and I'm a lecturer at the University of New England in Armidale, Australia. And I specialise in women's issues in Indonesia, including the representation in the media, and importantly how their relationship with power is portrayed and affects their place and their position in Indonesian society. So I've recently published a book called Women, Media and Power in Indonesia, which focuses on the representation of female politicians in the online news media. But today I'm going to be talking about Balinese women specifically and their role in the tourism industry, and let's say in the modern era, whatever that may be. But this presentation does focus more on the pre-COVID Bali, and that's based on the fact that most of the research has been done in pre-COVID Bali and when the tourism industry was actually quite active, and also based on my own personal observations of having worked in Bali in the tourism industry alongside Balinese women. So I'll share my presentation. So I'm going to be examining 3 intersectional factors here, which are class, gender and power. or power in a hierarchy in the Balinese tourism industry, specifically looking at Balinese women and their participation and consequences for their social and economic mobility or perhaps immobility. And I must emphasize that this is only a preliminary discussion. So this is not based on extensive data collection or analysis. This is based on my own critical observations of women's participation in Bali, and as well as engagement with literature on women's studies in Indonesia. In this context, we're focusing on Bali as a highly stratified society in terms of class, to some extent caste, and also gender. So women are still expected to play a more subordinate role within a patriarchal structure. And that's within Bali. And then looking more broadly, Bali within a global community, it's a context of global inequality and dealing with a colonial legacy, which is an interesting mix when we're talking about tourism, because we have guests, tourists arriving in Bali and the Balinese serving the guests. So in that context, it's quite hierarchical still. That approach is not a very egalitarian relationship between the guests, the tourists, and the hosts. Let's have a look at who I'll be focusing on in this presentation. So the tourism industry has a high representation of working class Balinese women. And for these working class women, it's seen as a really good, respectable way of providing income for the family. And being a hotel employee, or perhaps to some extent working in a spa, one that's located in a hotel, that's quite desirable. But yeah, a hotel employee, reception, or perhaps in a hotel restaurant, that's something that's desired by a lot of working class women because it's seen as a secure and a little bit glamorous job, because you get to wear a nice uniform, interact with foreigners, may make some tips, and you get a fairly steady income under normal circumstances. So they pursue a vocational education generally to match this dream. So from high school, perhaps in a tourism high school, then maybe taking a diploma and then getting a place in a hotel. So the wages that they receive, they're not large, but it's enough to sustain this kind of living standard. And if the husband is working, and that's expected to be the case, then this is seen as an additional income to provide for the family, and it keeps them above the poverty line. So we're focusing on working class women today, but I thought I'd provide a broader picture of the other class structures that operate, and focusing on women. So middle class women, this is a generalization. They're not normally employed in the same kind of role as working class women. They may aim for a job in a public service, maybe a more upscale hotel, a bank. Their access to these roles is made possible through family connections and their higher education. So we have middle class, and then we also have the wealthy, shall we say upper class, wealthy women. And they come from obviously wealthy families, landowners, business owners, and they may be in a hotel family. And they may also work in national or international companies. Basically, because of their greater financial capital, they have a lot more opportunities for success if they choose to be an entrepreneur, and connections will help them get a job, as well as their higher education that they pursue. And I should also mention poor women in Bali. So often you'll see these women operating, if they are in the tourism industry, if they're involved, they will be on the outskirts, so not within a hotel, but perhaps working on the beach, selling cane here, as we can see, possibly offering massage or running a small warung on the beach. Others are not involved at all. They may work on the land, jualan, working in the market. And for working class women, particularly in Bali, the ones that desire to get into the hotel industry, these kind of roles are not something that they aspire to. And I should also mention that in Bali, geography often is another determining factor, not just the family that you're born into and how well you do in school, but where you live, where you're born can determine what kind of work you'll end up doing. And so we're all quite familiar with those who come from the foothills of Gunung Agung. Some of them come down, so we'll see those women coming down from the foothills of Gunung Agung to Kuta or Denpasar. So class, the family that you're born into, as well as where you are, can really determine your pathway in life. Talking about Bali, I should mention caste, although I would argue that class trumps caste, but they often intersect. So talking about gender, for the Balinese women, it's been argued that they operate within a triple bind, or three responsibilities or three duties. So responsibility to their work, to their job, responsibility to family, responsibility to adat. And just looking at that list, 1, 2, 3, I would say that work would probably come last, although they have to do it, and that's how they make money. So they have to manage their work with these two other extremely important responsibilities. And more broadly, for most Indonesian women, they will be affected by this long-term national discourse of kodrat wanita, or women's biological destiny. So defining them as mothers, so that's your kodrat, that's what you're expected to do, and as wives. So you're expected to get married. And living in Indonesia when I was unmarried, childless in my 30s, it was a little bit mind-blowing for them because I was defying kodrat. And so anyway, in terms of kodrat wanita, there is also the additional discourse about women working. So they are allowed to work, but they must not neglect their family. So working conditional. So while you're working, unfortunately, the women's family responsibilities are not really taken seriously by the employers. So they're expected to manage that on their own. So for example, parental leave, when you have a child in the hotel industry, probably in the smaller hotels, let's say, maybe not the major hotels, but you don't really get much leave at all. And I've spoken to Balinese women about returning to work while their baby was still pink. Working in the hotel industry is a form of emotional labor. So you're putting yourself out there as a host, maybe serving in a restaurant or at the front desk, dealing with guests. So you have to put on this positive, bright face. So that's quite hard work. And then you've also got this emotional labor at home of caring for your children and maybe also your husband. So also working in the hotel industry, you do get a fair bit of flexibility in terms of working hours, particularly when it comes to adat or like ceremonies that come up. But for women, they have to perform yajna almost every day. So making offerings, giving offerings, and then quite often attending the ceremonies at the village temple, the family temple. If a Balinese woman doesn't perform these obligations, then it's looked down upon. For example, buying offerings instead of making it yourself is seen as, you're not being an authentic Balinese woman. And for working class women, who are working in a hotel, looking after their family, making offerings, they can't afford domestic help. So it's the responsibility of the woman herself, along with maybe taking advantage of her family networks, maybe her older children or her parents or her husband's parents, helping out. So I've set the scene here in terms of class and gender, and now let's talk a bit about power. So within the tourism industry, it is quite hierarchical. So the women are placed in a more subordinate role, subordinate to their boss, okay, their superiors, and also subordinate to some extent to the guests or the tourists that they serve. So this subordination is embodied, so they feel it, they act it out, and then reproduce it through their actions. And it's also enforced through the structures of economic power. So the boss obviously is their employer. What they say goes. So the women need to obey and stay on the good side. So when we serve guests as well, there is that economic power that the guests bring generally to Bali. And when I was working in a hotel, I was trying to encourage the staff to take a more friendly, easygoing, equal, egalitarian approach to serving the tourists. But they said, but we've been told, guest is God, which is almost like blasphemy because guest is not God. When it comes to the women themselves, as working class people, they are limited in terms of the capital that they possess. So limited social capital in terms of education. Their social network will be probably limited to people of similar economic backgrounds. And it's interesting that they're working in this international industry, but they themselves don't have the international experience. So they may have never travelled overseas themselves. They may, here in this picture, here we have some girls performing a welcome dance at the airport, and that may be as close as they get to overseas travel, being in the airport. So social capital, and as well as that, I've encountered this acute sense of malu, and when we learn Indonesian, it's translated as shy. But it's not just being shy, but it's also about knowing your place. So malu, if you overstep your boundaries. So I'd say, well, why don't you go over and talk to the guest and ask them about how their day has been, maybe offer them some suggestions, and they would say, oh, say malu, bu. I feel shy. I feel like that's not appropriate. I think often this concept of malu holds people back, and not just in terms of class or power structures, but also gender. So appropriate behaviour for a woman. Okay, you wouldn't want to be seen as too forward. For a guy, for a Balinese guy, and I've experienced this myself as a tourist in Bali, they're not as malu. They will approach you and say, boleh saya antar? But for the women, there is a very strong malu. It's almost like an anchor that pulls them back. That said, women are also capable, and I've seen this with some people, of navigating these power structures. Some manage to unlock the power of their cultural capital as a Balinese, and that appeals to the curious kinds of foreign guests, not the kind that come to be treated like gods, but the kind that come to Bali, and I would say this is the majority, the kind that come to Bali to experience culture, okay, whatever that may be, but they want more of an authentic experience. So they look at people like this gorgeous Balinese woman with the flower behind her ear and the kabaya making offerings. They think that is so attractive and they want to know more. Some are able to manage to cultivate a long-term relationship with the tourists, so Each time the tourist returns to Bali, they will meet up, they will take them to their village, meet their family. Okay, of course, some may have a more romantic relationship as well, but that's still a way of negotiating these power structures. So they're no longer simply serving the guest. Some do derive benefits from it. It's not just about friendship all the time. Sometimes it is, but we can't ignore that there is this economic inequality between a guest and a local Balinese person. So when we see these relationships building, the Balinese people are generally quite cautious to flaunt them. Okay, often people face not just malu, but the fear of people being jealous. Well, yeah, so there is this competitive nature within Balinese society, and if you see someone getting ahead, in Australia we call it tall poppy syndrome. So if the flower grows too high above the other flowers, we cut it down. So in Bali there is something similar, I feel, and so they have to hold back. So that was negotiation. Negotiating these pitfalls, negotiating certain benefits, and expanding your cultural, social capital, economic capital. So resistance as well, because we're operating within this hierarchical structure, and people naturally will feel some sense of oppression when things are too hierarchical. And when people feel that way, often they'll develop ways of resisting. So often these ways are not very explicit, they're a little bit more subtle. So within these tensions, we will see, for example, building up this sense of camaraderie with your co-workers, joking, laughing, complaining about the boss and how they treat you together as a group because you're all sharing this experience together. There are some who flirt with their co-workers. May not lead to anything, but this flirtation is a way to have a bit of fun in the workplace and not take things too seriously. Some may also really put in a minimal effort. I'm not sure if this is resistance exactly, or perhaps simply knowing your place, being malu and shy. Some may resort to stealing if they feel they're being mistreated, and that's not an Indonesian or Balinese thing, that's a reaction. Then we also have the use of social media or smartphones at work, taking selfies, chatting, and then also being rude, not being the nicest waiter or not being the nicest front desk person, because you can get away with it sometimes. And then sometimes we also see caste appearing as a way of getting an upper hand. When you're all in a similar kind of position, you're all waiters, if someone happens to be an Ida Ayu, that person may become a little bit more sombong. Of course, that doesn't always happen, but it's a possibility when that's all you have. So overall today I've explained the class system and how it channels certain people into the tourism industry. And I've also explained the role of gender norms and associated duties in setting boundaries for defining women's role in society and their potential to become economically mobile. And then I've explained the hierarchy within the tourism industry in terms of the employer and also the guests. And then within this hierarchy, how people perhaps maintain their position, their subordination, they negotiate this subordinate role or resist. And it may not revolutionize this power hierarchy. It may just be an outlet for frustration or frustration at this lack of mobility in this strict hierarchy. So people find ways to chip away and get a little bit back for themselves. So what about future research? As I mentioned, these are initial observations and a kind of framework to set up further detailed data collection and systematic analysis. But I believe that using this intersectional framework, so focusing on more than one factor and noticing how they relate to one another, class, gender, and power, is quite appropriate for a stratified society like Bali, and also this global context of inequality. Perhaps if people were interested in pursuing further research, it could involve ethnography, focus group discussions, in-depth interviews, discourse analysis, perhaps, for example, an analysis of training material. That's just one suggestion. These approaches could be used to uncover factors enabling, constraining, or maintaining social economic positions. Are they able to become economically mobile? Are they held back? Are they perhaps finding their own path within these constraints? I would also like to suggest that it's not simply limited to a sociological approach or humanities. This could apply to studies of the economy, health, and women's health and children's health in particular, because the repercussions of a working class woman working in a hierarchical environment with limited class and social mobility and having to balance these three major duties is going to have a strong impact on their health, physical and mental well-being, and as well the outcomes for their children and their families. And of course, we're now looking at a current, we're in the middle of COVID and a later, hopefully, post-COVID world. There is that hope. There's always a sense of hope in Indonesia that things will bounce back and people will always live with that hope. But at the same time, there is a serious struggle ahead for Indonesia and for, in this case, Balinese women in making their way in these straitened economic circumstances. So I wish everybody all the best, and I hope this presentation has offered some light, and I would encourage people to take it further with actual data collection and analysis through whichever approach and whichever research questions they may see fit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asenjono. I would like to, I'm sorry, here in my there is Musola, so maybe you can hear also be here because of the private being. So now I would like to invite the last speaker as a discussion, Dr. Deji Sofian from the Indonesian Consortium of Religious Studies from UGM. So time is yours, Pak Didi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It is indeed a great honor and a pleasure for me to be here again in Bali, since we are now entering the 8th International Conference on Interreligious and Intercultural Studies. And I am certainly happy that this year, or this time around, our theme is really quite novel, quite new for Bali, for the Hindu University, more specifically on gender, intersectionality, and diasporic communities. I must say I have this strange and very difficult task to sort of try to compound all of the presentations that have already been made, all of the great presentations, I would add. All the 6 presenters have presented their ideas and performances, and also some of the shared experiences with respect to various issues pertaining to gender, intersectionality, and diasporic communities. So first, I'd like to say that this international conference is also somewhat different in a way that we have not only gathered academics and researchers, but also a politician in our midst, and also an artist, Ibu Astari, who was previously also the Indonesian ambassador to Bulgaria. So we have a mix of very talented people, very talented women and men, who are talking about real issues and problems that we face today. We have seen in the presentations the different challenges and issues faced by women primarily in the workplace, in the tourism industry, in politics, and in various other settings and contexts. We have also seen the role of women and their sort of gendered interpretations of reality in the literature and also in the performing arts and in diaspora or in the diasporic communities, and also women in leadership positions in religion, faith, and spirituality, something which is fairly unusual, I would say, in most of Indonesia and including here in Bali. But from what I have heard just this morning, that there is a new perda, a new bylaw in the province of Bali, which would provide access for women in their involvement in the Desa Adat. And this obviously will provide much more opportunities for women to be able to be playing a proactive role in both politics, religion, and society, as our deputy district head had earlier mentioned about providing space and access to women in leadership positions. Some of the critical issues I must raise based on the 6 presentations is that there is a critical issue of economic inequality, which still exists among mostly women, as we know that those who are in poverty are mostly women. 70% of those in poverty are mostly women throughout the world. And then an issue of justice, issue of accessibility, issue of being able to participate at the same level as men. And then we have an issue of class, especially here in Bali, with the stratification of society, with the gendered sort of interpretations of society. But we have also seen social hierarchies in the workplace, in government, in industry, and so on, based primarily due to the unequal power relations between men and women. But I'd like to stress here that one of the important features of our discussion today relates to the position of women in religion, faith, and spirituality as well. And I think Ibu Astari's performing arts, I think, provides that that leeway to understanding the role, the historical role of women in spirituality, with her 9 pearls from heaven. And I'm happy to report to you that Ibu Astari and I had some conversations pertaining to her concept of the 9 pearls of heaven as well, prior to the launching of her performing arts. But obviously she is also concerned with how women are placed in the leadership role in religion, faith, and spirituality. And the last thing I would just like to say is that I certainly hope that there would be more discussions and debate about gender and intersectionality, especially here in Bali and in Indonesia. I think there has to be much more platforms that provide that discussion and debate and discourse. I think the more the merrier, and I think we will. I think what's most important is also how we can sort of translate all of these discussions and debates into policies. And I think with the presence of Ibu Wakil Bupati from Kediri here, that she would be able to help us as well to think through about how we can translate all of these unequal power relations to be somewhat implemented in politics and the policy arena. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, big applause for our guest speaker, moderator, and discussant. Thank you very much. And now we will continue to certificate delivery to our keynote speaker, also for our guest speaker, moderator, and discussion, and also chair Bapak Prof. Ardana. Certificate to delivery from our Rector Universitas Hindu Indonesia Denpasar, and also for our guest speaker by online, Ibu Ayu Kartika Dewi. I'm worried when I wrong spelling your name, Ibu. I'm so sorry, big apologize when I wrong spelling your name before. Thank you very much. And all the speaker, we will send the certificate by email directly to you. And we would like to invite Ibu Dewi Maria Ulfa as representative for our guest speaker on stage, and also Bapak Sofyan. Also Bapak Prof. Ardana to receive the certificate from Professor Damriasa, and Ibu Novi as a chairwoman, please to accompanying and assist Bapak Rector. Thank you very much. And also the souvenir exchange from Universitas Hindu Indonesia and Deputy Regency, Deputy Regent of Kediri Regency, East Java, Indonesia. So we need to take a picture for our documentation. Yeah. And now also the souvenir exchange from the Deputy Regent of Kediri Regency to Bapak Rektor of Universitas Hindu Indonesia Denpasar. And the other one delivered to Pendidikan Widya Karti Foundation, received by Bapak Profesor Ardana. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for our guest speaker, Rector, also head of the Pendidikan Widya Karti Foundation, and for all the audience, as our rundown or conference schedule starting this morning until the mid of the day, we will finish the first session this afternoon, and for the next agenda, after we break for lunch break, starting on 30 or 1 p.m., we direct through to panel session. So please, all the audience, check and going through the session by yours or its agenda. Thank you very much, and I will close with the Pramasanti. Om Santi 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 Om. I will remain again, so the organizing committee already arranged the plenary session in each virtual room, so please to check and going through the session by yours or its agenda. There is 12 room, so everybody will know already as you per rundown and schedule in your hand. Thank you very much. Attention please. Ladies and gentlemen, all the participants of the 8th International Conference on Interreligious and Intercultural Studies with Gender, Intersectionality and Diasporic Community. And right now we are going to the closing session with the wrapping up from Bapak Diki Sofyan and also the closing remark from Professor Dr. Iketut Ardana, MA. Thank you very much for your attention and cooperation. And for Bapak Diki Sofyan, time is yours, Pak.
Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you all. I'd just like to say a few words before we close this international conference on interreligious and intercultural studies. I must say that today has been quite an exciting day for everyone. I think we were all inspired by the morning session with all of the great presentations by the distinguished speakers from around the world and with various occupations and professions and experiences. And obviously this topic on gender, more specifically, is something rather new in the Hindu University of Indonesia and perhaps also in Bali. So perhaps we may think about linking up with Udayana University perhaps to set up some sort of a center for women's studies or gender studies, which could be operating here in Bali. The other thing I'd like to mention is that For all of the presenters, we are still expecting you to submit your papers to the International Journal on Interreligious and Intercultural Studies. Obviously, we have been publishing the International Journal twice a year now for almost 4 years. And so we are entering the, I think, 9th edition or the 10th edition of the International Journal. And with that, I sincerely hope that in the near future that our journal will become accessible through the digital open access journals through the internet. And with that, I'd just like to thank the committee members, most notably Mbak Nofi and Mbak Ia, for their hard work and commitment, and to everyone at the back, the IT people who have been working extra hard in managing the hybrid conference and the parallel sessions, and the Master of Ceremony, of course. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for your great collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you for Bapak Diki Sofyan. And for the next closing remark from Professor Dr. Pir Iketut Adana. Prof. Adana, time is yours, Pak.
Again, thank you very much for your warm cooperation, particularly to the keynote speakers, Ayu Kartika Dewi, Special Staff for the President of the Republic of Indonesia, for all university partners, for all of the main speakers from around the world, and also Universitas Mula Warman, Institut Agama Islam Negeri Kediri, Universitas Airlangga in East Java, and of course, Universitas Udayana, and all participants from the Hindu University of Indonesia, UNHI Denpasar. So I would like to thank you very much for your warm cooperation, and also we do hope that we can continue this cooperation in collaborative research and conference. And so I have noted that there are so many complex things and also so challenging research findings that can be studied further, for instance, on how this gender and intersectionality and also diasporic communities. So in our perception that the COVID pandemic, the pandemic of the COVID-19 is very strongly influenced of the structure of the people, is based on the gender. And for instance, I just noticed that the problem of gender, the problem of this feminism become a more hot issue. I think in Bali, for instance, since we don't have, for instance, the Banjar leaders, who most of them insist from the consist of the women, for instance, like that, and also we do carry out our research on how this Adat community, this Adat customary law affected strongly the increasing number of poverty in Bali. This is the big issue in our society, for instance, from the local perspective. So I think we need to have joint research about this, and I do agree with you, Pak Diki, because I think the problem and the study of gender and feminism is very important and very significant in order to understand better what's happening now in our society, in the modern and postmodern Indonesia. And of course, it's not end here, but we can continue our topic for the next agenda. It's about secret language, magics, and mysticism. That is the next topic that can be elaborated more, and we can prepare better from now, because our UNHI anniversary is on 3rd of October 2022. Okay, again, I would like to thank you for all of you, and I do hope that you can prepare for your topic, for your research topic, then can be presented in our next ICIIS conference. Ladies and gentlemen, now, last but not least, I should like to thank to Dr. Diki Sofyan from Indonesian Consortium for Indonesian Studies, Dr. Gunawan from the University of Mula Warman, candidate Dr. Maufur from IAIN Kediri, of course also our partner, Dr. Dundin Zainuddin from the Badan Riset Inovasi Nasional, and Ibu Profesor Yekti Maunati, Ibu Ita from ICIIS UGM, and also for all from the researcher, Professor Research from the Badan Riset Inovasi Nasional in Jakarta. And I do hope that we can elaborate more and also think about our topic, this topic, and you agree that the next agenda for our ICIIS conference is about secret language, magic, and mysticism. Finally, thank you very much. Dan saya tidak lupa mengucapkan panganjali umat Om Santi Santi Om. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for Bapak Profesor Dr. Iketut Ardana. Ladies and gentlemen, all our guest speaker, keynote speaker, and also all of the board for this collaboration and all participants. Finally, we come to the end of this event. I would like to say thank you very much for your attention and cooperation. And on behalf of the committee, especially myself, for the guiding this event, I would like to say thank you and apology if there is mistake in this event. So once again, thank you very much. See you on the next event. Om Santi 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 Om.